This episode of Mission Log is brought to you by Blue Apron, a better way to cook. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/missionlog.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 227. Chain of Command, Parts 1 and 2.
Welcome into Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Ken Ray.
And I'm John Champion. Each week on Mission Log, we watch an episode of Star Trek or two, taking it or them apart for messages, morals, and meanings, and seeing whether the whole thing holds up.
This week, Chain of Command Parts 1 and 2. The ones with 3 lights or 5 lights. I can't remember. How many lights are there, John?
There are 4 lights.
Jeez, you are touchy. We're doing today's episode in kind of a weird way. We'll say how and why in a moment, but first, a word from Blue Apron, a better way to cook. Yeah, Blue Apron is not quite replicator technology, but there are similarities. You start by pointing your internet device to blueapron.com/missionlog. You tell it what you want, just like a replicator, and soon a box of food shows up at your door. Good food. And recipes, because yes, some assembly is required.
Blue Apron comes out to less than $10 per person per meal, and they do all the hard work, picking out and delivering perfectly portioned, seasonal ingredients. You won't have too little, and you won't accidentally buy too much. So, less waste and potential savings.
And there's a bunch of stuff to try. You can choose from a variety of new recipes each week, or let Blue Apron's team pick for you. Recipes are not repeated within a year, so you won't be eating the same thing over and over again.
And you can check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/missionlog. You will love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. So don't wait. Start today at blueapron.com/missionlog.
Blue Apron, a better way to cook. And a huge thanks to Blue Apron for sponsoring this week's show. I'm cooking with lemon and ricotta and mascarpone now.
Right now, while you're doing the show?
No, not right this minute.
Okay.
Yeah, it's thanks to Blue Apron. I'm learning, is my point. So,
good.
Yeah, big fans of theirs, and glad they're fans of ours, and we hope everybody else likes them too. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd like that. What do you say I tell you how to do it? Mission Log Pod is the address to find us on Facebook, Skype, and Twitter. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, we would love to hear your voice. 323-522-5641 is the phone number to call. 323-522-5641. Our email address is missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our show website, including discovered documents, is at missionlogpodcast.com. And please do remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log.
So, what is different about today's show, and why, Ken?
I feel like I'm at a Seder.
Yeah. That's kind of how this will be.
What's different about today's show? Well, as often seems to be the case, it was a 2-parter, and it landed on my week to do the recap, which is weird because we even mixed it up a little bit last time. Time Zero was supposed to be mine.
Right.
And I was like, I can't even. I won't even.
Can't even.
And so you took Time Zero, and then...
which I loved. I was glad to do it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, fantastic. And so then I came back to this one. And these are much more dense, I would say, than Time Zero.
Oh, sure.
And we actually debated whether we're going to do them as one episode each or do the 2 episodes at once. Because usually we do 2-parters as one thing.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is you and I had, not an argument certainly, but a bit of a disagreement. You kind of seem to think that part 1 could have been its own show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I kind of didn't.
Right. Well, here's the thing. I think that part 1 is, it's about one thing in particular. Although it doesn't actually land anywhere at the end. So I agree with you on that. But it is about one thing. Part 2 is about something else entirely, and tonally is very different from part 1. But,
Agreed.
But they kind of have to exist together. You take an episode like Time Zero, and Time Zero is just one romp from beginning to end. Oh, we're going to go back in time, and here are the space vampires, and now we're not back in time anymore, and Data's put together again.
Right.
But this the tone shifts so much that I think that's why I was fixated on breaking this up. But as we discussed, part 1 would just sort of leave you hanging.
Yeah, I heard a review of Mel Brooks' The History of the World Part 1 once. Mm-hmm. I thought it was hilarious, and I think it was probably like 10 because it was when the movie came out. But somebody said, so this movie doesn't really end; it just sort of stops. And that's kind of what I felt like if we had gone to the end of part 1, then we wouldn't have been able to even talk about like any messages or morals or ideas. It's just sort of like, okay, well, now the Enterprise is under the command of a jerk. Spoiler alert.
Right.
And see you next week. So now the other thing is, in Time Zero, I think, or maybe in other shows, I can't remember, there have been times where like I don't even write about the B plot when I'm doing the recap. Because the B plot is so incidental that you can almost say, oh, yeah, and the Enterprise is still in danger.
Yeah.
And going over these, it didn't feel to me like there was a B plot. I felt like there was the story about Jellico and the story about Picard. And since we're doing something kind of weird anyway, I wrote the recap differently. So we're going to start with, prologue and Act 1, and then for whatever reason, I decided to write the story of Jellico and then write the story of Picard. So, because otherwise it's just you're hopping back and forth. I mean, the show's constructed the same way a regular show is. It's like, okay, here's what's going on in this plot. Now here's this one. Now here's this one. Now here's this one. But they're barely interlaced. I mean, they sort of cross paths a couple of ways or a couple of times. But otherwise, they're actually they're barely together. And so that's going to be a bit different as well. What's not different, though? Well, I mean, it is different because it's different every week, but it's not different because we do it every week. Huh? It's John Champion's Trivia.
Oh, yes. So, for Chain of Command, Parts 1 and 2, well, Part 1 was written by Frank Abatimarco, script by Ronald D. Moore, and we mentioned Frank as the writer on Man of the People, and he's been around this season as a supervising producer. Part 1 was directed by Robert Scheer. Most recently, we saw his directing work on True Q. Now, Part 2 was written by Frank Abatimarco. However, Jerry Taylor did a total rewrite on the script, even though she is not credited. Part 2 is directed by Les Landau. Of course, he has been with us since the beginning with Encounter at Farpoint, and he most recently directed Time's Arrow Parts 1 and 2. Now, there was a lot of sensitivity given to the subject of torture in this episode. Frank Abatimarco had contacted and consulted with Amnesty International, and Patrick Stewart was able to review footage from the organization of torture. It was his concern that none of the subject matter be toned down in the final version of the script. Jerry Taylor agreed with him. Even though she did that rewrite, they kept the intensity and the rawness of that feel in the script. Now, in one of the earlier scenes, you notice that Picard is naked, and Stewart did appear naked. That was on a closed set. He wanted to make sure that that scene was as realistic as possible. The conceit of the torturer demanding that the victim identify 5 lights rather than 4 is a direct reference to George Orwell's 1984, in which it's 4 fingers the torturer holds up, insisting that his victim, Winston Smith, sees 5. Now, a very important piece of trivia here, and Ken, this kind of goes back to our chat a moment ago about whether we break this up into 1 episode or 2. So an important piece of trivia here is that the story was originally conceived as a single episode. But you can save a lot of money by using minimal sets and minimal actors when you split this one into 2 parts. So it was really a cost-saving measure that landed this episode the way that it did. Now, The episode first aired, Part 1 first aired in December of 1992, and Deep Space Nine was soon to premiere in January of 1993. It had originally been conceived that Picard, Worf, and Dr. Crusher would go to Deep Space Nine, meet Quark, and this is how they get passage to Celtris 3. However, because that show had not premiered yet and nobody knew who Quark was yet, it didn't make sense to force that tie-in. Now, Ken, how do you like your balut?
Raw, like my other eggs, apparently.
Like your Tasper egg? Yeah, so the Tasper egg that Picard and Gul Madred are eating, well, if you happen to not be familiar with it, there is a popular food in the Philippines called balut, which is the fertilized egg of a duck or a chicken, boiled and eaten, all of it, feathers, bones, beak, and all. I'm an adventurous eater. I think you know that about me, but this is very low on my list of adventurous things that I will eat.
Right.
Yeah. So, don't send us any in the mail, please. And we hear a song here, Sur le Pont d'Avignon, sung by Picard. He's sort of murmuring that in his tortured state under his breath. It's an old French children's song. I remember hearing it in French class in school, so I recognized that when he was singing it. Kind of cool. And we've got a handful of guest stars that we need to talk about. Ronny Cox as Captain Jellico. Now, Ronny Cox is one of those awesomely recognizable and authoritative actors that you have seen everywhere since the early 70s. Aside from numerous TV guest roles, I'll just give quick recognition to two of his outstanding genre performances, first in RoboCop and also in Total Recall. Yeah,
see, he is one of those guys that you're going to recognize, but to me, he will always be Dick Jones.
Yep.
I mean, that's it.
Yep.
He's never been in anything else. Now, I recognize him for two things, Edward Jellico, and Dick Jones.
Yep. We also have Natalia Nagulich as Admiral Nechayev, also working steadily since the 70s. Natalia is from Chicago, and again, way too many credits to name here since she has done just about everything. I love that she played Mrs. Shirley, so Brian Doyle Murray's wife, in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. You remember that movie, classic, and she will be back as Admiral Nechayev. We have Lou Wagner as the Ferengi, Daimon Solak, another veteran actor, and we will see him again as a different character on Deep Space Nine. One of his earliest credits is an episode of Lost in Space, and I absolutely love that he played Lucius in the original movie Planet of the Apes.
Nice.
And we have John Durbin as Lemek. Now, we've seen John before about hiding under a bunch of different reptilian makeup in Lonely Among Us, and he will be back for both Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Many other TV credits for him, including, of course, Moonlighting.
So we'll be talking about him again.
Mm-hmm. And finally, we have David Warner as Gul Madred. And, of course, we have talked about Warner before. He was in Star Trek V and VI. And he and Patrick Stewart had worked together in 1965 in a production of Hamlet. Incidentally, Warner got this role just days before shooting began, as the original actor cast had to drop out. Because of that, Warner is reading from cue cards for most of the show, and you wouldn't know it.
Once upon a time, there were two men who went to Starfleet Academy, and they were each assigned very hazardous duties. But Vice Admiral Nechayev took them away from their ships. And then, things got much worse.
Prologue. Near the Cardassian border, the Enterprise is met up with the Cairo. Vice Admiral Nechayev is on the Enterprise. In no time flat, she chases Riker from Picard's ready room, declines refreshment, and tells Picard that he's been relieved of command of the Enterprise. That was fast. Act 1. Nechayev tells what's left of senior staff that the Cardassians are massing troops along the Cardassian Federation border. The Federation thinks the Cardassians are planning to reclaim one of the disputed regions along that border. The Enterprise is being sent to open negotiations with the Cardassians. The hope is that seeing the Federation flagship will let the Cardassians know how seriously they're taking the situation. Riker asks where Picard is, and Nechayev says Dr. Crusher, Lieutenant Worf, and he have been reassigned. And that's all she's going to say about that. Command of the Enterprise is being given to Captain Edward Jellico, commanding officer of the Cairo. Jellico helped broker the treaty between the Federation and the Cardassians a couple of years ago. Riker doesn't think the Enterprise needs a new captain, though Nechayev does. Nothing personal, she says. Jellico just has more experience with the Cardassians. And now, the story of Captain Jellico. Edward Jellico hits the transporter pad running, almost literally. Riker rushes to keep up with his pace and his orders. He wants to see crew profiles ASAP. Also, let's move the ship to a 4-shift rotation instead of the current 3 shifts. Boy, the Enterprise is neat. Jellico says he completely understands why Riker turned down commands of his own to stay aboard. All right, see you at the transfer of command. And with that, Jellico's gone. The transfer of command is short on pomp. While senior staff is assembled, Jellico says nothing once command is transferred. Just dismissed. Geordi wonders how permanent the transfer of command will be, though Riker points out they don't usually go through the ceremony if it's only a temporary assignment. Troy talks with Beverly, who can say nothing about anything that's going on with her. Meanwhile, Picard is giving Jellico some last-minute tips regarding the ship. But Jellico says he doesn't need them. He's more concerned about how Picard's team is shaping up. Picard says they're doing well, though he wishes he had more recent intel. Jellico figures the Enterprise can send a probe that might help and calls Riker over to make it happen. Jellico wants Delta Shift to handle the probe. That would be the 4th shift he ordered. Yeah, about that. Riker wanted to discuss the 4th shift thing with Jellico and why he hasn't enacted that yet. Jellico's not interested in talking. Delta Shift should be on in 2 hours, and it better be. Get to it. In his absence, Jellico expresses doubts about Riker to Picard, though Picard says Will is one of the finest officers with whom he's ever served. Jellico's a whirlwind of activity on the bridge. Do this, reroute that. All those stations over there are battle stations now. I want battle drills for every shift. All 4 of them. See to that personally, Will. And get that fish out of the ready room. Jellico's in engineering, now telling Geordi to up these efficiencies and change those things. Everywhere he goes, Data is in tow. Well, everywhere except his fish-free ready room. Counselor Troy stops in to see Captain Jellico. He's glad to see her. He wants to go over the duty roster. She'd like to do that as well, but first, she wants to talk about how the change in command is affecting the crew. It can be a lot for them, and for the new captain. Maybe if he took time, got to know them, maybe then things would go better for everyone. Yeah, he doesn't have time for a honeymoon with the crew, but tell you what, since you've thought about it so much, you be in charge of morale. See to it that they transition to my way quickly and easily. And also, put on a uniform. Dismissed. The tension among the crew is a real thing. Geordi says he can do everything that needs to be done, but not as quickly as Jellico wants. Someone needs to talk to him. Riker says it can't be him, so Geordi says maybe Riker can talk to Picard about talking to Jellico. That, Will says, he can do. But when he stops in to see Picard, man, Picard is beat. He says he hasn't trained this hard since he was working up to a marathon back at the Academy. Riker decides now's probably not the best time to pester Picard, and bids the captain good night. In their last meeting before Picard and his team depart, the former and current captains of the Enterprise talk over Riker. Jellico thinks he lacks luster, though Picard again sings his praises. If Jellico just gave Riker a chance. But here's the thing, there's no time for chances. Giving Picard a little blunt talk, his mission is likely to fail. He's probably not coming back. There's a decent chance the Enterprise is going to end up in conflict with the Cardassians. He doesn't have time to give anyone time. And no offense, the Enterprise is mine now. Now take your book of Shakespeare and go. With Picard and his team gone, the Enterprise is a rendezvous with the Cardassian ship Reklar to talk about the tensions along the border. Gul Madred is waiting for Captain Jellico in the observation lounge, so Jellico retires to his ready room. Jellico explains to a confused Counselor Troy that Cardassians are like timber wolves, bold in large numbers, cautious by themselves, and with an instinctive need to establish dominance in any social gathering. So that's what Jellico's doing, what he assumes Lamech would do as well. Troy points out the problem with the plan. In the fight for dominance, one wolf could end up dead. After leaving him waiting for over an hour, Jellico, Riker, and Troi finally join Gul Madred in the observation lounge. And he is not happy. But he goes ahead trying to establish dominance, starting with insulting Jellico. He says he will not be dictated to by a mere captain. But Jellico flips it. You're obviously not serious about negotiating. I'm out of here. Jellico and company storm out of the observation lounge. On the bridge, Jellico's practically dancing, though. Hey, do this. Wait a bit, then go back and tell Lamek that you've calmed me down and I'll be ready to talk soon. He'll want assistance. Tell him I won't like that idea, but go ahead and give him permission for, just 2 aides. Riker tells Troi that he'll give Jellico credit on one point. He sure is sure of himself. No, replies the empath. He's not. Time passes, and Jellico and company return to the negotiations. Gul Madred and his no more than 2 aides say they're massing troops not for war, but for defense. Riker says the Federation won't attack, though Lamek finds that assertion curious, especially in light of news that the Federation has sent a small team into Cardassian space. Jellico says he has no idea what Lamek is talking about. Of course he actually does. He's talking about Picard, Crusher, and Worf, a point Lamek makes clear before the short recess and talks. Back on the bridge, Riker's picking up a lot of communications activity around a planet on the other side of the Cardassian border called Celtris 3. What he's not picking up are Theta Band emissions. It looks like there had been some, but they've suddenly stopped. On a coded channel, Jellico passes that intel along to Vice Admiral Nechayev. Jellico figures Picard and crew did their job, though they've yet to hear from the secret team. A significant amount of time passes, and things are not going well in negotiations. Gul Madred is now willing to name names. He says Picard, Crusher, and Worf have attacked the Cardassian outpost on Celtris 3, killing over 50 men, women, and children. He says they have Picard now, though they've not decided how they'll respond to his latest provocation. But rest assured, they will respond. When the Cardassians exit, Jellico finally tells Riker and Troi of Picard's actual mission. It is possible that he and his team were captured. He sends Will in a shuttle to a pre-established rendezvous point to see who, if any, of the away team shows up. Will comes back with Crusher and Worf. The fate of Picard is unknown. Will wants to start working on a rescue mission, but Jellico cans that idea. Harshly. They don't even know that Picard is alive. Now get to work. On other things. Time passes, and hey, they do know Picard's alive. Gul Madred brings proof of life in the form of a video. It looks like he's being treated harshly, and Riker argues that under the terms of the Solanos Convention, Picard should be treated better. But that treaty only applies to prisoners of war. Is the Federation willing to admit that Picard was there on a mission? No? Well, then Picard will be treated as a terrorist, so the Solanos Convention does not apply. Counterproposal, though. If the Federation withdraws entirely from this sector, the Cardassians will give back Picard with their compliments. Jellico says he'll discuss it with his superiors. Of course, he's not going to suggest they withdraw. On the contrary, he tells Riker and Troi that he'll suggest more ships along the border. And what of Picard? Jellico has no comment on that. But Riker has plenty of comment. You have to acknowledge that Picard was under orders, then he'll have the protection of the Solanos Convention. But Jellico says that's just the kind of advantage Lamek is looking for. As first officer, Riker questions Jellico's judgment on this matter. Well, that's nothing for Will to worry about. Jellico relieves Riker of duty. And suddenly Data's got new red pajamas. Data had been Jellico's right-hand man-droid anyway. Now he's Jellico's first officer. Talking over the Picard situation with Data and Geordi, Data figures out that the Cardassians' trap was meant to snare Picard specifically. As for why, Jellico figures the Cardassians might want to know about Starfleet's defense plans for this sector. So they must be planning an attack soon. But where? He puts Geordi on trying to figure that out, and it doesn't take Geordi long. It looks like the Reklar has experienced hull degradation caused by exposure to a molecular dispersion field. Such a field could be found in the nearby McAllister Nebula, which is also near Minos Corva. That's probably where the Cardassians plan to attack, and they'll need to do it soon. The fleet that's probably hiding in the McAllister Nebula can only be in there for 72 hours before their hulls would start to break down for realsies. They'll head the Enterprise to Minos Corva. Now here's the plan. Someone's going to pilot a shuttle into the McAllister Nebula and attach antimatter mines to the Cardassian ships hiding there. Geordi and Crusher think this could be a mistake. Even if there are Cardassian ships in the nebula, they might not be gearing for war. Jellico says that doesn't matter. Starfleet's approved the plan. Get to it. All that's left to figure out now is who will pilot the shuttle. Jellico wants Geordi to do it, though Geordi says for a run like this, the man Jellico really wants is Riker. He's the best pilot there is. It wouldn't be accurate to say that Jellico goes to Riker hat in hand, but he does go to him. Cards on the table, he doesn't like Riker. He thinks he's arrogant and a lousy first officer. But he needs him. Riker says he doesn't like Jellico either. He thinks he's arrogant and a lousy captain. Jellico says he won't order Riker to fly the shuttle, so Riker says, fine. Ask me. He does, and Riker agrees. He also says, you're welcome, though Jellico never said thanks. The flight's dicey, but Riker and Geordi pilot the shuttle and place the mines. Then Jellico plays his hand. Hailing Gul Madred, he tells him about the mines, then detonates one small mine, just to prove what he's saying is true. Now, leave the nebula, one ship at a time. Disarm each ship as you go. Oh, and we'd like Picard back, please. Transfer of command back to Picard has even less spectacle than the earlier transfer. Jellico stands relieved, tells the bridge crew that it was an honor to serve with them, and with that, his story ends. This is the story of Captain Picard. Picard is running Worf and Crusher through a series of training exercises. Tunnels, Cardassian assailants, falling rocks. They're going somewhere to do something. Picard can't tell them what. They'll need to trust him. Now back to training, the difficulty of which has increased again. Time now for the transfer of command. It's short of pomp. Yeah, you've heard this part. The part about how he didn't say much, the part about how Beverly can't say a thing, the part about how Riker sort of disappointed the new captain with the 3-shift, 4-shift thing. Jellico expresses doubts about Riker to Picard, though Picard says Will is one of the finest officers with whom he's ever served. The next time we see Picard, he is a wreck. More grueling hours of training, no doubt. Riker stops by to see him, though he never says why exactly. He says it's nothing urgent and bids the captain good night. In their last meeting before Picard and his team leave the Enterprise, Picard and Jellico talk about Riker. Jellico's not impressed, though Picard again sings his praises. If Jellico just gave Riker a chance. But here's the thing. There's no time for giving him chances. Giving Picard a little blunt talk, his mission is likely to fail. He's probably not coming back. There's a decent chance the Enterprise is going to end up in conflict with the Cardassians. Jellico doesn't have time to give anyone time. And no offense, Picard is no longer captain of the Enterprise. So, that went. Once away in the shuttlecraft Feynman, Picard can tell Crusher and Worf what the training's been all about. Starfleet intelligence thinks the Cardassians are developing a metagenic weapon. That's a type of biological weapon that can kill all living things on the planet, leaving infrastructure and resources intact. A month later, the toxins dissipate, leaving the planet ready for Cardassian settlers. Metagenic weapons are really dangerous, both for the victims and the attackers. They've been banned for years. Even the Romulans won't use them. And we know how dangerous we're supposed to think the Romulans are. It looks like the Cardassians are working on a way to eliminate the danger on the attacker's side, a way to deliver dormant metagenic weapons that could be activated by subspace theta band emissions. Such emissions started popping out of Celtris 3 recently. As an expert in theta band carrier waves, Picard was chosen to lead this mission, to find the metagenic facility and destroy it. Being a medical type, it'll be Crusher's job to find and destroy any metagenic toxins, and Worf's along for his good looks. Actually, because he's a top-of-the-line security guy. They'll not be going straight to Celtris 3, of course. Fly a Federation shuttle to a secret Cardassian base. They'll need to arrange a sneakier mode of transport. This they do by working a deal with a Ferengi on Tormund 5. Well, this they do with a little dealing and a lot of flirting with Daemon Solok by Dr. Crusher. And just like that, Picard, Crusher, and Worf are in the tunnels on Celtris 3. They're honing in on the Theta Band emission Starfleet intelligence had picked up. The caves are as dangerous as the training had indicated. There are bats, chasms, cave-ins. Good thing they had all that training. At last they find the room that should hold the metagenic lab, but when they get in, there is no lab. Just some sort of Theta Band emitter. It's a trap. And Cardassians are waiting. Firefight, fistfight. Worf and Crusher are able to escape, but Picard is captured. He's taken to quite possibly the most menacing Cardassian we've met so far. He refers to Picard as a challenge, quite possibly the most interesting to come to him for years. He knows everything about Picard, right down to his knowledge of theta waves. This was a trap set specifically for Picard. When Picard asks why, the Cardassian, Gul Madred, says in this room, Picard does not ask questions. He answers them. And if Madred doesn't like Picard's answers, Picard will die. A significant amount of time passes, and Picard, under interrogation by Gul Madred, is singing like a canary. They've got him on some kind of truth serum. But he still won't tell them what they want to know about Federation plans to defend Minos Corva. He says he doesn't know. Later, a more sober-seeming Picard is brought to Gul Madred. Madred has a proposition. Tell me of Federation plans to defend Minos Corva, and you can spend the rest of your life in comfort. As an archaeologist, maybe. Picard demands to be returned to his ship, though Madred says that's not going to happen. So, how about my offer? No? Fine, we'll do this the less civilized way. Gul Madred summons guards who hold Picard as Madred slices into Picard's chest. From now on, Picard has no rank. He has no name. Madred will refer to him simply as human. The guards then strip Picard naked, cuff him, suspend him by his wrists, and leave him alone. New day, new questions. This one's easy, though. Gul Madred asks the human how many lights he sees behind him. The human counts. There are 4 lights. No, says Madred, there are 5. No, there are 4. A quick change of subject. The incision that Madred made in Picard's chest, they use that to implant a small device, one that can produce unfathomable pain at the punch of a button. Madred gives the human a small demonstration. Now, how many lights do you see? There are 4 lights. Then, of course, there's more pain. More time has passed, and Picard is much worse for wear. He seems to be passed out as Gul Madred talks with his very young daughter. Eyeing the abused human, she asks her father whether humans have mothers and fathers. They do, he says, but humans are different, and they don't love their children the way the Cardassians do. They're not the same as we are. She leaves, and Picard, not as asleep as he seemed, expresses surprise that Madred would let her see what he's doing to Picard, that he would let her see the cruelty he's inflicting. Madred says she's been taught from a young age that enemies of the Cardassians deserve their fate, though Picard says when children learn to devalue others, they can learn to devalue anyone, including their parents. The two talk over Cardassia. Picard says they were a peaceful people once, though Madred says that just led to disease and starvation, the death of millions. Sure, hundreds of thousands have been killed since the military took over Cardassia, but they've made advances, and they're feeding the people. That's what the military has done for Cardassia, and that's why Madred's daughter will never fear hunger. Her belly may be full, says Picard, but her soul will be empty. Yeah, enough of that. How many lights are there? What lights? Asks Picard. Of course, that leads to more pain. More time passes, and Picard's getting worse. Good news, though. Madred says Picard is free to go. A disbelieving Picard heads for the door, which Madred says is fine. They'll get the information they need from the human female, the one who is with Picard's assault team, Dr. Crusher. Oh, she's fine, for now. Worf's dead, but seriously, don't worry. We'll get the information we want from the woman. Of course, Picard can't leave. He'll stay in harm's way to spare Beverly. The mind games continue. The Madred is willing to feed Picard. What he offers is disgusting by human standards. Some sort of egg with a living thing inside. But Picard eats the living thing whole. Madred's impressed. He tells the story of the first time he ate one as a cold, hungry 6-year-old. He found a whole nest. He ate one. He planned to save the others, though a bigger boy beat him up for them. And that gives Picard a new image. He'll no longer see Madred as a warrior. With every minute of torture, Picard will see Madred as a boy who is powerless to protect himself. Enraged, Madred threatens Picard by name, and Picard has more strength. He used his name. There are 4 lights. Madred is 6 years old, and despite the obvious pain, Picard says Madred cannot hurt him. More time passes, and Picard is at the breaking point. Left alone, he smashes the control for the pain device. Caught in the act, Madred says, "That's pointless. He has more controllers." Still, says Picard, it felt good. Well, enjoy that, because here comes some bad news. The Enterprise has been destroyed, according to Madred. The taking of Minos Corva was successful. Picard will be forgotten by the Federation, though he still has a choice. He can spend the rest of his life in misery or in comfort, at Madred's whim. All he has to do is answer one question. How many lights do you see? Picard stares up, though his consideration is interrupted. Gul Madred has arrived, and he is upset. Picard's supposed to be ready to go. Madred tells Picard that he's being taken back to his ship, though before he goes, he yells to Madred. There are 4 lights. Back on the Enterprise, transfer of command back to Picard has even less spectacle than the earlier transfer. Jellico stands relieved, tells the bridge crew that it was an honor to serve with them, and with that, his story ends. In his ready room, there's a bit more to Picard's story. Troy's read Picard's report, though he left out one part, the part about Madred's final offer. In the end, he was ready to tell Madred that he saw 5 lights. He'd have told him anything. But the worst part, in the end, he actually thought he saw 5 lights. And with that, his story ends.
Wow, human.
Human.
That was epic, human.
Let's talk about something else. You want to?
Yeah. All right. Let's start at the beginning.
God, that was like an hour and a half ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that. Quick question. In the 24th century, do they not send urgent orders by email or by subspace or something? Because Starfleet is like, okay, we've got 12 seconds to use this opening scene for maximum drama.
Here's how I think they do that actually every time. Every time it happens. Couldn't they just send a message and then somebody says, "We paid for the Excelsior model. We're using the Excelsior model."
Right. We have to use it. Yeah. Pretty much. Man, that was super dramatic and really short opening.
Yeah, you know what I was actually thinking about? If you were like with your roommate when this came on, because that's how I watched Star Trek when I was this age, or when it was first on, and your roommate was like, no, let me just watch the game, please. It's like usually the open takes forever and they don't really do anything. Right. And you'd come back.
Yeah, wait for the credits.
Right. Yeah. If you missed the open of this show, you'd come back and they're like, oh yeah, Picard's just gone.
Yeah, right.
Wow, really?
Yeah, that would not be good. And man, Jellico, he told Deanna what to wear. Wow. But I'm really glad to see her in a uniform, actually. It seems like a long time coming for that.
I do have a question about her, though.
Yeah.
If I may. Do her empathic abilities take a while to work on humans?
Maybe.
Because she went in to talk to Jellico and seemed genuinely surprised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Absolutely no time for that. And I'm thinking Data would have known that he had no time for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true.
And he can't feel.
Right.
And then she's supposed to like hyper feel.
Yep.
And yet, she's just like, whoa, Captain really didn't seem receptive to that idea.
Maybe she just sort of turned it off for a moment. And speaking of Data, by the way, interesting to see him in that red uniform, although I think it doesn't do much for his color because he's yellow, you know.
He really got washed out by that uniform, honestly.
Yeah, he's literally yellow. By the way, I am so glad that in that shuttle ride, Worf said that he did not know what a metagenic weapon is, because guess what? I didn't either. So very lucky for us that you've got a guy there in the show who can just say, I don't know what that is. And then somebody says, here, let me explain it to you. Because
should we be concerned, though, that the head of security doesn't know about that kind of weapon that's been banned?
Maybe here, ask the doctor. Yeah. Hey, where does the fish, Livingston is his name, by the way, where does he go when he's not needed or wanted?
Okay, so my first thought was with the puppies.
Yeah, right.
But then it occurred to me, I'm guessing the dolphins could probably take care of him.
Okay. All right. Sure.
Because there are dolphins, right?
There
on the
are.
Enterprise. We've established that. Oh, we've never seen them.
Nope.
But we know they're there.
Yeah.
Although, is that really terrible of me?
No.
I think assume?
We had to, we had to think it. Look, I'm just going to say it. I'm a little weirded out by that scene where Damon Solak needs to be convinced to give them a ride. There's Picard's approach, and then there's Worf's approach, and then there's Beverly, who is a lovely woman, but it just seems like such a cliche piece of writing.
Yes, I agree that it's a cliche piece of writing. You're right. I did wonder a couple of things about it, though. Like, let's say that Solak was not... let's say his proclivities ran to the more masculine.
Sure.
Would Worf have given Solak Umox in a bar?
Oh, that's a good question.
Would Worf have played with Solak's earlobes? Or would Picard, for that matter? Yeah. I think, honestly, Picard might.
Could Picard order Worf to do that?
Oh, wow. That'd be kind of weird, though. That'd be like a level of kink, wouldn't it?
Maybe.
Worf, play with his ears, play with his ears, play with his ears. Also, I did wonder if your earlobes are going to have that kind of like effect, shouldn't the Ferengi really just cover them up when they're out?
They really should.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, yeah. Well, you know what I'm thinking. I don't have to tell you.
Mm-hmm. I really admire Worf's confidence about the phaser at level 16 being good enough to cut through all that rock. It says, hey, here's this all this rock, and we need to tunnel through it, and we can probably get through it. And Worf's like, level 16. Oh, great. So if he didn't know what a metagenic weapon is, at least he knows exactly what level on a phaser will bore a hole through that. Probably at least as effectively as a Horta would. So good job on that. There was a moment, there were a lot of moments where, let's just be honest here. If it were me in the torture room with Gul Madred, he could have said 2 words to me and gotten near me, and I would have just cried like a baby and spilled my guts and said, please let me go home. But there's the moment where he pulls the knife and he asks Picard, are you in good health? And I'm thinking Picard had a great out. He could just said, artificial heart. You can't cut into me. And maybe he would have taken some mercy on him.
Is it just me? Or is Gul Madred the Cardassian version of the Thin White Duke?
So, Ken, I don't know if you tweet, if you're on the Twitter very much.
I am on the Twitter.
You are?
Yeah.
You are, yeah. You are, and we both are, as Mission Log. Mm-hmm. But there is a discussion that has cropped up in our Twitter feed. This is very interesting to me because sometimes people will tweet directly to us with a question or a comment, but then sometimes people will just sort of like rope us into a conversation that is thematically related. Mm-hmm. And this latest conversation kind of goes like this. Okay, Captain Jellico, good Starfleet captain or best Starfleet captain?
You've got to be kidding me.
Nope, totally serious.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know how I missed this discussion. And I guess maybe I'm glad I did, because really? Those are my only 2 choices? Seriously?
Well, it kind of comes down to that. There are a lot of Jellico fans, Jellico defenders out there, and I kind of get where they're coming from in some respect. I mean, first of all, he makes Picard look just warm and fuzzy. Mm-hmm. You know, you and I talked at the very beginning of Next Gen about how Picard was kind of like hazing Riker, and he was just so uptight, and this was, boy, he is not like Kirk at all. Nobody's going to be able to get close to this guy. And now he's like, we can just come in and have a cup of tea with this captain, because he's just a heck of a guy. And, look, he's tired because he's working too hard. We'll leave him alone. We'll let him take a nap,
Right.
Now Jellico comes in, and he has this sort of fetish for formality, and he gets his crew to push themselves in ways that they didn't think they could. Now, I don't think the crew necessarily has to like their captain, although certainly there's an argument to be made about a management style where the followers have to, or there's a benefit from followers liking their leader. But this guy's not making any friends, but he's actually getting people to push themselves beyond what they think their limits are.
Okay. I guess. I mean, I think I don't think that's why anybody signed up. I don't think that's what they're there for. And I don't. It's not a style of management to which I've ever glommed, I guess would be the best way to put it. I want skin in the game. I want to be on board personally. And the thing that we've seen, I guess, so far from every captain, I mean, Kirk was a bit more brash to begin with, but I mean, he always had Bones and he always had Spock. I mean, when Kirk was writing people too hard, Bones could say, "Hey, dial it back a bit. You're going to burn these people out." There is nobody that Jellico is going to hear that from. And he's sort of like a bull in a china shop in a way. I mean, the people under him are saying, "Hey, this is actually going to be disruptive." And my assumption is they're not saying, "Hey, this is going to be disruptive and I don't like it." My assumption is they're saying, "Hey, this is going to be disruptive, which is going to actually mean that we're going to have some problems running the ship this way." But he's decided that that's the way it's going to be, so that's the way it's going to be. He's not interested in anybody else's opinion at all, including the guy who made the Enterprise the flagship of the Federation. I mean, maybe it's the flagship just because it's the biggest ship, but my assumption is it's a flagship because it's the biggest and it's the best. I mean, there are other Galaxy-class ships out there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Well, some have been destroyed, but but
that'll happen. You know why they got destroyed? Yeah. Because they didn't have a captain like Picard because they weren't the flagship.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. I'm not saying that Jellico. I'm not saying that organizations can't run the way Jellico has them running. But if Jellico were running a Quick Mart or a Fortune 500 company or a dry cleaner or a car dealership, I feel like anybody who basically wasn't conscripted, I feel like anybody who wasn't on a continuing mission in the middle of nowhere would have quit on day 2, honestly.
Well, I agree with you. His worst leadership trait is that he will not listen to the people around him. That is his absolute worst trait. And here's the thing, though. You said that this is not what these people signed up for. True, they signed up for an exploratory mission in space, but they are also this quasi-military outfit that may have to go fight at some point. And Jellico might have had the right instincts of what needed to be done to get them to that place. So I get it that he doesn't probably inspire confidence or the will or the want to do better the way that Picard does, or certainly Kirk does. That he is sort of beating them into their positions as his subordinates, and that's unfortunate because that will come back around to bite you right in the rear end. There's an interesting moment where Riker says he's sure of himself, and Deanna replies, "No, he's not." And I kind of wondered what to do with that moment. I wondered if it was there to plant doubt just strictly in the audience about Jellico's abilities, like he's going to do something incredibly foolish. Because in the end, he actually kind of wins the day. He's the guy who says, here's our crazy mission, but we're going to do this. And he wins the day with it. And should Riker have been worried? Riker's been waving the flag all this time saying, hey, you're doing crazy stuff. But by that point, Riker was kind of pushed out of the picture anyway, or soon after he was to be pushed out of the picture anyway by Jellico. So it was an interesting moment. I wondered more what Deanna had picked up from him, and since she picked up at least something, is this just all a big mask that he wears, that he's really just a frightened child on the inside?
That's a good question. I don't know. That never really comes back, which kind of bothered me. And what makes it incredibly difficult, actually, I kind of want to just throw that line away, not because there's not something to be considered there, except in the end it seems, there really was nothing to be considered there. But also, she's been so wrong about Jellico all the way through.
Right.
Like when Jellico goes to his ready room, right, instead of going to the observation lounge, I understand she had to go in so Jellico could explain, but she's not stupid. And plus she's empathic. So let's say somebody else is stupid, right? Let's say he goes into his ready room and Data starts to correct him, says, excuse me, but they're that way. And then Troy could have actually explained, he's doing this thing. I mean, she's got this ability that is not even remembered for most of the episode. The one time it is remembered, she says something that ends up being a MacGuffin.
Yeah, right.
Now, I did have this other question about both. It's funny to me that people are thinking that he could be the best starship captain, because I honestly, the one parallel that I could make was wondering about the styles of Jellico and of Gul Madred.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm wondering what we were to make of the, if you'll pardon the term, humanity of those two characters. Okay. Jellico shows almost no humanity, except for the pictures drawn by his son, which first litter his desk, and like by, I think, the end of the first episode, are actually framed on the walls of the ship behind him.
Yeah.
And then not only does Madred have his sad street urchin story, he's got this little girl to whom he reads each night at bedtime. Mm-hmm. I mean, talk to me about those elements of humanity. Talk to me, if you would, about what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only reason that we really need to humanize Gul Madred is really for Picard's benefit. Picard has to have that breakthrough to kind of put the pieces together and see Madred as something other than just the all-powerful torturer, the guy who can control, punishment or pleasure. So I think you have to do that for Picard's sake. Now, for Jellico, I don't know if that was simply, to have the pictures on the wall and show that he's got a kid. I think that might have simply been the case of the writers trying to let the audience know that this guy is no nonsense, all business. He's going to push his crew, but he's the kind of captain who has to do that because we're potentially going into this war zone. And not that Picard would be incapable of doing that, but as Nechayev points out, Riker is not the right guy to do that because he doesn't have experience with Cardassians, and we don't really know what Jellico's background is. But I think we have to show that Jellico is a real person and not just the guy you see at work. But for us, for the audience, we're only seeing the guy at work. We're basically seeing him through the eyes of the crew. So I think the things that you're pointing out are, for Picard, it serves one purpose with Madred, but it's also, I think it's also something that's serving the audience to say that these are whole characters. They have lives. They're not just the two-dimensional beings that are on screen.
So then do you think there's any part of it that's also talking about the kind of thing that we often talk about on Star Trek? Your enemy is not a faceless enemy. Your enemy is not a mindless thing. Evil is not necessarily evil. It's different. Which I'm not saying I'm not saying that makes the Cardassian a good guy, but I'm thinking again, go all the way back to the original series and Balance of Terror, right? Back when the Romulans were actually scary.
Yeah, right.
there were Kirk and this Romulan saying, "Man, I wish we weren't on opposite sides, because he seems like a decent sort. You get Gul Madred saying that at the end to Picard. Of course, you don't know for certain that Gul Madred means it, but when he says, look, live out your life, man. I will get you food. I will get you a good place to live. I'll get you women. And we can talk philosophy because your mind is just nuts, man. I would love to talk philosophy with you. I mean, but we don't know if he's actually just saying that to play Picard or if he's saying that because he means it. But I still couldn't help wondering. So I listened to Dream of the Blue Turtles by Sting the other day. And what's really interesting is the song Russians I actually find kind of insulting now. But I remember at the time thinking it was amazing. When did the Dream of the Blue Turtles come out? They're 84, 85?
Sure.
Somewhere around there. So we're we're starting to get to the end of that Cold War. Sorry. We're starting to get to the end of that Cold War. But you and I still woke up every day wondering whether or not there was going to be a nuclear war.
Yeah, of course. And
then Sting comes along with his hippie self. Doing this song saying, hey, you know what? They're on the opposite side of stuff. And yeah, we've got bombs pointed at each other, but they got kids. And so my hope is that they like their children as much as we like our children, because that's the one thing that might get us through this whole thing. And I couldn't help wondering if that's why we had that moment with Gul Madred of like, okay, yes, he's evil, he's bad, and he's going to go read to his little girl tonight. I mean, we're on opposite sides, but we're not. I'm not being an apologist for the Cardassians. I mean, he was absolutely terrible in this episode, which I think is why I got so much stuck on his humanity, and honestly why I got stuck on the picture of the elephant hanging on Jellico's wall, because I got no humanity off of that human at all, except that he's got a kid, and he loves his kid to the point that he's going to put up those god-awful pictures. So that's what people are going to see. He's offended by the fish, but that thing that might be an elephant, everybody's going to have to look at when they come in.
Well, I think we might circle back around to this discussion as we wrap things up today, because yes, I agree with you that there is something in here about the contrast of humanity and inhumanity for sure, and it's a big Star Trek theme that crops up. I don't think that's in question at all. Hey, do you think the Enterprise crew members are just being whiny?
Well, it sounds like you do.
Well, the thought had occurred to me because you've got because you've got Jellico coming down to engineering and saying, "I want this, I want this, I want this," and Geordi's saying, "But it's going to be really hard." And then Data says, "Yeah, we can do this," because Data's not thinking emotionally about it.
Well, he's not only not thinking emotionally. Data's going to live forever. Jellico is thinking like a machine, and he turns to a machine and says, "Can this be done?" And the machine's like, "Oh yeah, totally." The machine who doesn't feel tired, the machine who doesn't feel put upon, the machine who doesn't feel, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Geordi then talks to Riker about whether or not, Jellico's actually expecting too much. I mean, here's the thing: there are faults in the crew. In this episode, Riker not doing the 4 crew rotation thing is just bad form, straight up. I mean, he either should have expressed his concerns immediately, or he shouldn't have just taken it upon himself to not do it, right?
Yeah.
Without talking to him. Geordi thinks the Cardassians might be hiding in the nebula for science.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You're dumb. You're just being dumb at that point, and I don't know why. The biggest flaw to me, though, was Geordi and Riker's plan to make an end run around Jellico and talking to Picard.
Yeah.
I think if Riker had actually done that, it's been a long time since I've seen these episodes. I really thought that Riker was going to take his concerns to Picard, and that Picard was going to tear Riker a new one.
Interesting.
Because I would think that would be the thing. I mean, especially where the title of the thing is Chain of Command. I would really think that, that's the only thing Picard could have done at that point.
Right.
I mean, and he might then have gone ahead and talked to Jellico about what a jerk Jellico was being, in his estimation. But he would have to have he might have busted Riker down to you're a corporal now. See how you like that. Because, I mean, what they were trying to do there, as much as I just said a minute ago, that's not what they signed up for. There literally is a chain of command. And he now serves under someone else. And he's very lucky that Picard was too tired to talk. Or he's very lucky that he saw that Picard was too tired to talk. Because that's the kind of thing that ends up in your permanent record.
Yeah, no, exactly. I have to agree with you there. Hey, I mentioned it in the last segment about the metagenic weapons kind of as a joke. But I am glad that in this episode there's a bit of a discussion about biological weapons. And we learned that they are banned throughout the Federation, and even the Romulans don't use them. Just kind of a thing that is a hot point, because it's something that in the 20th and 21st centuries in real life, that is a thing that we talk about and we discuss. Clearly.
We actually, you and I know a guy who's talked to us about this a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
I love the fact that these writers were under the impression that by the 24th century we would just be figuring out how to sort of localize this. Because the guy that we know is like, 5 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, exactly.
Sleep tight, everybody.
Hey, let's talk a little bit. So you brought up that scene with Gul Madred and his daughter because of the attempt to kind of humanize him. But my take on it, and I think the other thing we're supposed to take away from that scene is that it is just so completely and utterly chilling. The dialogue that they have is so simple, and it's so on the nose, but it says everything. Just in those few moments where Gul Madred tells his daughter, well, yeah, humans have mothers and fathers, but they don't love them the way that we do. They don't love their children the way that we do. And then, of course, Picard follows that up with when children learn to devalue others, they can devalue anyone, including their parents. So watching that moment with Gul Madred and his daughter, and you can picture it being said. Pick anybody in the world that you think is the enemy, or anybody in history that you think is the enemy, and know that they're telling that to their kids in the opposite way that then you would tell something to your kids about them if you were to paint somebody as an enemy. This is a thing that we do, and it's a horrible thing to do, and it perpetuates that cycle of distrust and, as Picard says, devaluing the inherent humanity in those people. Also, at the end of this episode, we are left with a big question about Picard's state, his mental state. He says that he was ready to crack. And I really wonder, would he? And, had this carried on for another 5 minutes, would that be a thing that he actually did? And would we, the audience, have felt any differently about him if he had?
Well, he said he was about to, so I got to figure he would.
Maybe.
I actually found myself wondering if the episode, obviously a television episode can't prove whether torture works or doesn't.
Sure.
But I'm reminded of that part in Reservoir Dogs when Mr. White and Mr. Pink are beating the beat cop that they found, right?
Yeah.
Because they want information and he thinks they have it. And nice guy Eddie comes in and says, you beat this guy long enough, he'll tell you he started the Chicago fire. That doesn't make it so. I mean, what good would Picard... I mean, at the end, I feel like all it really was Gul Madred having a battle of wills with Picard. He just wants he wants to find his breaking point. That's all he wants at this point, because Picard's got nothing for him, right? He has no information that Gul Madred's going to be able to use. He's not going to be able to use him as like a spokesperson. There's not enough time to Manchurian candidate him because they are literally coming in to take him away at this point. I mean, in the end, it really is just it's just finding his breaking point. But what I found myself wondering was, like, if you torture somebody, right? If you beat somebody to the point that you get them to tell you what you want to hear, how do you know they're not just telling you what you want to hear? I mean, it seems like it's no good. And then if they were your enemy and suddenly they're like, oh, after a month away, they're like, oh, well, no, actually we're friends. No, I mean, they're actually fine. I mean, it's useless. You're not getting reliable information out of them, nor are they any good as a spokesperson, because anybody looking at them knows, well, yeah, you beat them until they said they liked you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, it's very true. Yeah. At the end of the day, I can't help but feel enormous sympathy for Picard. I mean, literally everything that is horrible or profoundly emotional, like whether it's being assimilated by the Borg or his own personal family strife or the whole experience on Catan, whatever. All of this stuff is torturing him already. Give the guy a break.
Yeah.
And, and that kind of goes back to my question about if he had cracked. I don't think I would have felt any worse for him. Give the guy a break or some therapy or something. But it all gets dumped on Picard and seemingly so much more in the last couple of seasons of this show that if we need a guy to just mentally anguish, we'll just pick the captain.
In fairness, the first 5.5 seasons it was Troy.
With all of the captains back on their proper ships, it is time to see what we can take from Chain of Command.
I'm going to ask the listeners a question, and I want the listeners to answer the question just like I had said the magic word from Pee-wee's Playhouse. How many segments are there? Yes, that's right, because we've reached segment number 4 on the episode, the one where we talk about the messages, morals, and meanings of a given show, and figure out whether the whole thing holds up, or the whole things hold up in this case, because it's Chain of Command Part 1 and Part 2. And I do put the question to you, Mr. Champion. Do these episodes hold up?
Well, so let's go back to where we were at the beginning of the episode, talking about these in 2 parts. Part 1 is all lead up. It's about what happens on the Enterprise when a new command style is suddenly in charge. And it's kind of reminiscent of every bad admiral or commodore that we've met since the original series. Everybody has to adjust and then figure out, are they going to work with this guy? Is he going to work out? Are we going to complain? Are we going to, buckle down and do the job? So there's all that interesting kind of workplace stuff going on there. Part 2 is entirely different. It is a 2-man show performed by some of the finest actors you will ever find on TV, on film, or on stage. It is incredible to watch them together, and that script is nearly perfect in all of their scenes. Taken as a whole, the story is essential Star Trek. Even if it's not a typical style for Star Trek, it poses some interesting ideas that compare humanity. So here's where we go back to what you were talking about before. We compare humanity embodied in Picard versus inhumanity embodied in Gul Madred. And I guess you could even make that stretch again to say, what is that sort of element of humanity that Picard has with his crew that Jellico does not have with his crew? Now, does Jellico learn anything by the end of this? Maybe not. I mean, he did his job. He saved the day. So I don't know that he walks away with any sort of different arc other than just thinking like, wow, that other crew that I had to command for all of a few days, they sure were whiny. I can't wait to get back to my real ship where they'll just do what I say and not question it. And then they will be full of resentment for their captain. So there is this interesting thing going on here. What is it that makes humans act humanely? And what is the humane way to behave that we've been talking about since the very beginning of Mission Log, when we look at these kind of big, bold statement pieces done by the show. So, to ask whether the episode holds up, yes, as a production, it is produced wonderfully and on such a shoestring budget to make 2 episodes out of 1, essentially. For sure it works. It works in terms of design, certainly in terms of acting and in terms of script. But it works as a piece of Star Trek because we're talking about big themes, important issues, and asking, okay, what is it like to be a human being? And what are the things that human beings should strive to be? And we see that in Picard. What about you?
I think about the only thing I would disagree with in what you just said is I think there is a chance that Jellico learned something. We don't have we don't have him reflecting on it much, but he does. Well, no, he doesn't. I was going to say he does have to go ask Riker to pilot the shuttle, but he doesn't. He could order Riker to pilot the shuttle. Even if he doesn't like Riker, he, in the end, I think, does have a bit of respect for him. He doesn't think he's a good Force officer. He doesn't think much of him at all, but he does not order Riker to do this thing, which he could still easily do, because he didn't decommission Riker. He just relieved him of duty, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he could have just been the same bull in a china shop that he was all the way through. And I like the fact that when he shows up, he's like, look, I still don't like you, but I understand you are the person that I need. Even though I thought I had this other guy, or heck, I could do it myself because I used to do some pretty good flying, but I have listened to somebody else and I have heard that you are actually what I need here. So I'm not going to tell you to do it. Really? You're going to make me ask? Okay, fine.
Right.
Will you please do this?
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't say please. He says, will you do this? And Riker says yes. And then Riker rubs his nose in it a tiny bit by saying, you're welcome, even though Jellico didn't say thank you. But in the end, Jellico does tell them all that it's been an honor to serve with them. And I'm not saying that we get a big cuddly moment with Jellico at the end. I do feel like, though, he might have picked something up along the way there.
Maybe.
Everything else, I mean, the only parts of the show that lag are the parts where they're actually on Celtris 3. But even then, it's so short that I'm kind of okay with it. And it was actually fairly tense a couple of times as well. Although, boy, Beverly bounces back from having a ton of rocks fall on her.
Right, yeah.
Like nobody.
She's good like that, yeah.
Yeah, she's fine. Yeah. So, I honestly think both episodes actually hold up really well. Because, I mean, like, even though you say episode 1 is just build-up, I disagree. I hated Jellico. I hated him. And I felt for the crew. And so even in that, I felt sort of invested in that episode because he felt like not torture the way Gul Madred was torturing Picard, but he felt like torture to that crew, to me. So, I think they both hold up really well. And then as one story, heck, they almost could have been a movie.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
What about the messages, though, sir?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot to chew on here, and certainly there's this exploration of command style. There's this exploration of torture, which is just sort of this big, scary topic for Star Trek to take on. But I think the thing that I boiled down, I really love that line at the end of the scene with Gul Madred and his daughter, and then his encounter with Picard right after that. And Picard says, her belly may be full, but her spirit will be empty. I love this line so much. It's not that this episode is simply condemning military might and conquest. It's a condemnation of power without compassion. What is the point of being the winner in the end if there's no peace? No growth, no acceptance, no introspection, nothing else that should be the benefits of peace. Because as far as we know, the Cardassians and sort of embodied here by Gul Madred are just completely focused on the idea of conquest. Well, we're strong, so we're right because we exercise conquest. So therefore, all of our actions are justified because we've won. But it's Picard who questions, what have you actually won? Well, sure, you can provide your daughter with food and some relative form of safety here, but you're simply continuing the cycle of battle after battle after battle, antagonism after antagonism. What's the actual end game here? So I think that's probably the most interesting idea behind this episode for me to grasp. How about you?
Well, what's interesting is I'm both going to argue with you and agree with you.
Okay.
I mean,
that's your prerogative, yeah.
Gul Madred is not just about conquest. I mean, he does say, because Picard says he used to be a peaceful people, and Madred's like, yeah, and what did that get us? Famine, disease, millions of people died. And Picard's like, yeah, well, hundreds of thousands of people have died since the military took over. And he's like, yeah, but look at it. We're feeding the people we got left. I'm not saying that's right. I mean, that goes back to Conscience of the King, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man, these 20,000 people aren't going to be able to survive, so I'm going to kill, 15,000 of them.
Right.
But the other 5,000 are going to be great. Okay, well, we decide that's wrong. So, I absolutely agree that is a wrong thing. At the same time, he's not without a certain amount of compassion. It's just he's doing it wrong. I'm reminded as well of what Khan said. I mean, we offered order, right? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but you were genocidal in doing it. So right. I'm not saying, right. I'm definitely not saying that the military junta that is run by the Cardassians is doing everything right. I will say they're not just about conquest; they're about conquest and feeding, the people they haven't decided to kill. Which,
yes,
so I'm still agreeing with you.
Yeah. Well, but think about Picard's perspective. Picard is the guy who we respect because at the beginning he said, you try, and if that fails, and you try again, and you try again, and you right. try again, in terms of a peaceful negotiation. And right. the Cardassians have locked themselves into this idea of, well, look at the benefit. We get to feed people because we're strong militarily. So that must be the right thing to do, so we will just keep on battling anything that we perceive as an enemy, and we will paint everything that we see as an enemy because we're going to justify those means to ourselves. So
yes.
They've lost any sort of perspective outside of that very narrow field.
Okay, I'm with you on that.
All right.
Yes. You asked me about other ones. I would say there's sort of the standard thing of, don't be blinded by your perception. Jellico thinks that Riker's useless. Jellico was making a dig at Riker when he first met him. Boy, this really is sure a neat ship. I sure understand why you never went off and got your own ship. Right? I mean, and in the end, the person that he has hated the most all the way through, with the exception of Gul Madred, the person on his crew that he's had the least use for turns out to be the person who's going to do the best job. He has to sort of change his preconceived notions, which is so often a theme in Star Trek. The thing that you think is one way might actually be a different way.
Yeah.
Again, I'd like to say that there's a lesson here about bad management styles, but first of all, apparently not everybody thinks that Jellico's management style is bad. But I mean, it also works, Now, like I said before, if he were running an office, half his people would have quit on day 2, I think.
Sure.
But, whatever. It's 90 minutes.
Yeah, right.
And then he's gone. So, maybe we can leave off the management style thing and just concentrate on the fact that he did eventually have to open his mind a tiny bit to the person who sat there and said, "You're closed-minded."
Yeah. Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Find out more at roddenberry.com. For more exciting Star Trek podcasts, check out Trek FM. That's trek.fm. And for the latest in Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit trekmovie.com.
Want to help support this show? There's a way to do it, and that way is at Patreon. Go to patreon.com/missionlog to find out more. Next week, Ship in a Bottle.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. Why did the Enterprise crew not like their new captain? After all, there is always room for Jellico. End transmission.